Welcome, welcome, welcome to the SubHub podcast. I'm MK Sullivan.
And I'm Danny Moreno. And today we have Judith Wyder. She's a professional mountain runner, sponsored by Hoka, and even bigger than that, she's a mom. In 2019, she burst onto the scene, leaving a trail of record-setting victories across the Golden Trail World Series. Notably, she secured the overall women's championship also that year. Most recently, she won the Dolomites Sky Race, which is a stop on this year's Golden Trail World Series, and she currently holds the course record, and that was her third win there. Adding to her list of accomplishments this year, she also placed a notable second place in the trail short race at the World Championships. Welcome, Judith.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's start out. Where are you at, and how are you doing?
Thanks. So I'm actually in Davos at the moment, together with lots of trail running juniors, and enjoying a week here in the mountains.
And you guys are coaching them?
Yes, exactly. So together with my husband, we're holding this training camp to build up the junior base a bit more here in Switzerland, since we are not able to have lots of juniors at World Championships, for example. We try to have more young ones to find this passion about trail running. And we're going out on trail runs, doing technique inputs, strength training, kind of like the whole thing. And it's really fun to be out with them. It gives me a lot of motivation too.
That's really cool. I just saw actually this week that in the US we're having like a high school mountain running championships, which I didn't even know existed. So maybe like a ton of countries are just starting to really push those juniors towards trail running.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Here in Switzerland, we're quite back with that, actually. For example, the Swiss championships, they're quite long. There's only an uphill race. So actually, I think in 2-3 years, there will be a lot of changes. And that's probably also the clue why trail running is growing so much in the last years and will continue to grow as well.
Yeah, we know that you have a strong and kind of long history in orienteering. Is that kind of one of the main sports that, the youth kind of go towards, or how is it in Switzerland?
So orienteering is kind of a small sport here in Switzerland too, if you compare with soccer or hockey, for example. But as I've been a runner all my life, my parents did orienteering from the early age. It has been really like normal for me to go there and to do sports with like orienteering. But I actually did also cross-country skiing a lot. Ski orienteering was a part of my life as well. But my real elite sporting was in orienteering. And I mean, it's quite close to trail running, even though you're running through the forest, in the middle of the forest, actually not using trails much. But I mean, when it comes to technique running and to be out on difficult trails, it comes really close. And for me, it's to be out in the nature is in both orienteering and trail running really fun.
Yeah, you were an extremely successful orienteer. You have a couple gold medals in world championships. So we're curious, like, what made you kind of switch over to trail running from orienteering?
Yeah, it has been an amazing career there too, actually. I'm really happy and proud about my orienteering career, even though it's already some year ago I've been stopping. But to do orienteering, to be an orienteer, you have to train a lot in the certain terrains, like close to where the championships are held. For example, when the championships were held in Sweden in 2016, I was living in Sweden for 8 months. So, I mean, with a family and a family of 2 kids now, it makes it difficult to train well in these surroundings. So after being an orienteer for about 20 years on quite high level, for me, it was the time to stop and to look where I can go or how fast I can get on trails or on roads. And I was not finished with training or with trying to find new challenges. So that's why I went directly over to trail running and continued competing there. Even though I'm not the trail runner who trains or who does competitions every weekend. So nowadays it's like more doing some certain training trail runs on the mountains, or then also trail competitions. But I'm quite often at home and I'm able to train from my home base in Bern.
Yeah, I can see how that can be tiring year after year, moving the family around. Just due to like personal lack of familiarity with the sport, why is it that it was advantageous to live in the area for months at a time?
So orienteers, they need to know the terrain really well. They're always mappers who do draw the maps. They have a certain technique. So you have to get to know this technique to be able to orienteer as fast as possible. Since orienteering is a competition where you get the map at the starting point and you do not know the course in forehand, you need to be able to read the most out of the pre-competition as possible. And so you're training as close as possible on the certain competition area. And I mean, if you like, for example, a Swedish forest or a forest in US is quite different to a forest here in Davos or also in Bern. So you have to get to know that and to do lots of training in this area to be the best. And that's why you probably need to move there or do lots of camps around this area.
Orienteering just sounds so wild to me. It also it kind of sounds like what's the event in Tennessee that they put on where they do the loops?
Yeah, the marathons, like the Barkley.
Yeah, the Barkley marathons, where they're just like, here's a map, do some loops, get a little lost. So, like, props to you for being able to do that at all. I would get so lost.
It's so badass. I did like a small version of that recently, and I had my phone and I still got lost in like 5 minutes. That's amazing.
It's cool to be able to read the map actually also on trail runs, because for example, last night we did a course for these kids here at the training camp to read maps, because it's important to be able to read maps when you go out in the mountains. And I mean, that's an advantage I have. I'm able to read a paper map really well. And even to memorize a course, for example, in trail running really well. I do not actually need to run on a course to know where it goes up and down and how it looks like technically if the maps are good. So that helps actually as well.
Yeah, that's incredibly a great skill to have that transfers over to trail running. Because, yeah, when I look at a map, I definitely need that side profile. Like, I can kind of guess where the peaks and valleys are, but the side profile definitely helps a lot. So that probably helps when you probably haven't run a course sometimes and you're going there for the first time. Maybe like Ola Deneria in 2021, where you're like, oh, I know exactly what this is probably going to look like. So that's great.
Yeah. It's a good example. Yeah. Ola, I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
So it was really helpful, actually.
Yeah. It wasn't until I got up there that I'm like, oh, we are on a ridge this entire time. That would have been helpful to know. Yeah. So when you switched over to trail running, did you have a coach in orienteering that then continued to coach you?
Yes. So actually, my coach, Thomas Hürzeler, he is the national team coach together with my husband in a Swiss team, in a mountain running team. So he already coached me since 2015 when I still was an orienteer in the physical part. So I had someone who helped me with the technical part in orienteering as well. But he was always the one in charge in my physical training. So we actually just continued our work throughout. It's quite a fun partnership or work together, since Thomas is like really a well-structured coach. He helps me a lot, but I'm kind of not so well-structured with two kids around. So we're actually matching well, even though I'm not the one who is like really doing every training at its time from time to time. But yeah, we always find a way to work together and have fun, and I get like the most of it out of it, I think.
And do you still, because you were a ski orienteer as well, and you said that you cross-country skied and stuff, do you still include skiing in your training in the wintertime, or do you run all year round?
So I actually do run all year round, but I am also a ski teacher, a cross-country ski teacher. So I'm actually also ski teaching in wintertime, but also adding my cross-country skiing to my training, as well, for example, as cycling in summer. Or today I did actually some aqua jogging, like deep water running. I'm not able to run as much kilometers anymore. Maybe like 5 years ago, I was able to train a bit more kilometers, but nowadays I do have to add more cross trainings into my training to be able to do volume trainings as well. But I actually like it because it gives the training more variability and different phases, and you see different things. And yeah, sometimes I even like strength training, which I do twice a week, and not always, because mostly when it's nice weather you just want to go out. But on the other hand, you're really thankful you have something which helps you to prevent injuries and just to give another face on your training.
Is the choice to run less kilometers, is that because you're balancing family life, and or is it just kind of like changes in your body?
So it's mostly changes in my body, actually. I have a story with 2 pregnancies. I had a stroke in 2017 as well, 2020 as well, and I had a broken bone in my pubic bone. So it's kind of like lots of things which made it more difficult to do lots of kilometers. It's not like only the body itself, which it's not tolerating it, but it's also my muscles, and probably maybe also that I'm getting older and not able to run as much as I did before. But I think it makes also that I enjoy these kilometers I have more than I did before, and I'm more thankful for them when I get the chance to run outside.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think that's really important for people to hear. Because your journey has been so inspiring, through the trials and successes. And I think it's important for people to know that you can always adjust. And like you said, find some variability in their training, and you're still kicking ass, if not kicking maybe even former Judith's ass on Dolomites and stuff like that. So that's just really inspiring to hear, especially, having 2 kids too along the way. It's important to be open to that, right? And not be stubborn that, no, I have to run X amount of kilometers to be my best self or best form of self.
I mean, I can't say that it's easy. Sometimes, of course, it makes it difficult. Like for me, when I see people running, of course, I have Strava too, or like seeing lots of other runners in a training camp who do more kilometers a week. I struggle sometimes to see them and to compare myself with them. But on the other hand, as you say, it's still the joy who has to be there. And I mean, normally I wasn't that bad when I'm able to compete. So just to believe in what you're doing helps a lot in the build up, and also to get better results at competitions for sure as well.
Yeah, I'm sure you've learned that as a coach as well. Like, believing in the training is so much bigger sometimes than the training itself. And so just, knowing that even though you're not putting the kilometers in, like, you're still getting a ton of aerobic work in on the bike, in the pool, all those things. I think it's awesome. And there's nothing like an injury to make you really, really miss running and like find a little bit more joy in it when it comes back. So is that the pubic stress fracture that you mentioned, was that the reason that you haven't raced much since 2021?
Exactly. So I had a really horrible race in Sierre-Sinal 2021. I actually ran with lots of pain. If I would have known that it's that bad, I would not have run, or I would have stopped actually. But I just didn't believe that it's that bad, and I just continued since it was like going okay, but I didn't enjoy the race. So yes, from then on, I was not able to run at all for about almost a year, actually. I could start cycling a little bit and swimming sometimes, but it wasn't before October 22 I was able to start like training a little bit uphill. That was 1 month before the World Championships in Thailand, where I then in the end did quite decent races in the uphill and up and down races.
Yeah, I would say so. Were you third or fourth in the vertical at World Championships?
No, actually not. I was sixth at the up and down race.
That's what it was.
For me, it was an amazing race since I didn't do any downhill meters before that race for more than 1 year.
That's crazy.
At the vertical, I was 12th. So there I was suffering quite much. I felt my cycling legs. I was preparing mostly just cycling in a bathroom to get some humid and warm weather kind of in Thailand. So yeah, it was a hard race, the vertical, but the up and down was just crazy good for me with the 6th place. Yeah.
That's so impressive with the fact that you had just started training in October and that was like 3 weeks later, like training uphill. Yeah.
Thing. So so you came back at the end of 22, and then so you were fully healed at that point going forward. What kind of lessons now looking back, maybe aside from maybe you shouldn't have raced or dropped out, that are you taking from that injury?
It's always hard for me like to say this and this and this I take with me, because I mean, it's a process, I think. And for me, sports, it's really important, but it's not the most important thing in case of my whole life. Of course, it's still my job and I still want to compete and want to be one of the best or get the best out of myself. But on the other hand, the other parts are really important as well. So as I mentioned, my family and my husband, without them, it would not be the same. So, I mean, to accept and to love this kind of puzzle I have in my life, I maybe even got to know that better, or I actually I just like it more now, and then listen to my body more in case of small problems. I mean, as an athlete, you probably know quite many feelings or injuries you have while you're running. Like sometimes your calves are hurting a little bit, or your back is a bit stiff, or things like that. But it's so hard. Is it an injury, or is it just some feelings? And for me now, it's more about taking off from training if I feel something, and not when I really get an injury. So start to, react earlier. Do more cross training as well, and strength training is a more important part for me now. And I actually do less races. The racing, like every weekend racing, it takes too much energy for myself. So I rather do just I did only the Dolomites and the World Championships, and I rather do 2 races in a whole half year, and then doing I was really keen to do Segama and Moblo as well, but it would have been too much for me. So I do rather less than more for myself.
Yeah, Danny and I have been talking about that a lot. Just watching, week by week, everybody that's entered into these races. And we're just like, oh my gosh, how are these people running so often? Danny and I are trying to give ourselves at least a month between races. And these people are boom, boom, boom. So it's nice to hear from you that that doesn't work for everybody. Because sometimes I think as a professional athlete, especially for me, because last year was my first year kind of racing internationally, it was oh, well, everybody's doing this, so I have to do it. But you kind of have to separate yourself and realize what works better for you. And so I'm glad that you figured that out at this point.
Yeah, I think it's so different. I mean, as a young athlete, coming newly to the sport, probably it's really attracting to do lots of competition. But then on the other hand, traveling, for example, as for you, it's so far to travel to Europe, for example. It takes so much energy. And for me, it's rather I do 4 more years in kind of trail running and do different races every year to see more than doing 1 year with lots of competitions, but next year I will be out again. So I think, yeah, it's so different. And probably if you're young, you do it for some years, but also these athletes will probably need to take a break from time to time to just get back some energy.
Yeah. I definitely would say I learned the hard way earlier on in my career, just racing way too much and, feeling burnt out for a little bit. And it was actually lucky that 2020 came around because I feel like that might have saved me in going into this next part of the couple years. So you've mentioned now a handful of times your family, and we do want to touch upon this before we kind of shift to more of what's been happening this year. But as a mom of two, the first question is, has anything changed in how you approach the sport from when you had your first child to then having your second child?
So probably yes and no. I mean, family has changed a lot in my sporting career. Before, orienteering was kind of the most important thing. I always worked as a physical therapist, but I didn't work a lot, and the focus was mostly on sports. Nowadays, it's kind of like shuffling between everything and trying to have as much time on every part of my life. So the focus, of course, has changed. If I think when I got my first daughter, Lynn, in 2017, I was still an orienteer. I did another year in orienteering. I actually won another World Championship medal or two, actually, after giving birth to her. The comeback there was really fast. I was running World Championships 5 months after giving birth. No, it was the European Championships, actually, in orienteering, 5 months after giving birth. That was just so fast, and everything just went so smooth. After giving birth the second time with Jonna in 2020, everything was different. I had also a comeback from stroke, kind of. I had a stroke when I was pregnant. So it took way more time to come back to racing or training. In the first month, I was not even thinking about training for international events anymore. So nowadays, I'm way more thankful what my body does with, or what my body copes with. And I'm taking every day by itself or every race by itself, and just keep on being thankful for what I'm able to achieve and also to explore or to do, actually.
And how do you balance being a mom and a professional runner?
So, of course, I'm struggling from time to time. It would be stupid to not say that. Of course, I'm sometimes really thinking it would be easier to have a normal job, 8 to 7 or 8 to 6, and have the kids at daycare every day. But actually, I have my husband who has a flexible job as well. He works actually quite a lot, but he is able to have breaks from work if he has to take care of my kids, since they are just 3 and 6 now. So they're not able to stay at home by themselves. And then my parents are actually really close to our house. It's probably why we're not leaving or moving to the mountains or closer to the mountains, because they're a really important part in my sporting career too. Without them, it would not work. And then we actually do have some daycare as well for the smaller one, 1.5 days. So I get these 1.5 days off from my 2 kids to be able to do a bit longer training there. being back at lunch latest. So that works quite well. And then on weekends, of course, we try to balance Gabriel's, my husband's, trainings, because he should be able to run as well, and mine. So it's sometimes hiking apart with the girls and then doing a run there, or I go really early in the mornings, or it really depends on the program.
I love that. Yeah, I think it's important for everyone to hear that it's not always rainbows and butterflies, even when you're dealing with a flexible job with one person or both people in the relationship, both parents. And so you've been doing this balancing act and you're coming back from injury at the end of 22, and you have an incredible world championships considering you were training less than a month really in Thailand. Going into this year, did you have your goals mapped out, or are you just kind of going to see how the body was going to react to training, and then as that happened, start scheduling stuff?
So I do kind of have a map or a schedule about my year, but this year it was actually really difficult to map it out perfectly, since I was not able to say if I will be able to run 46 kilometers in June, or in May almost. It was a really long distance, or like for me, this short distance at World Championships was really long. 46 kilometers was the second longest race, or maybe even the longest race I ever have ran. So I was not able to say before if I will be able to run this. So I had actually two different scenarios with the up and down and the vertical, or the short trail. And I was able to have the qualification for both races. So I was actually able to just decide some weeks before the championships, okay, we go for the short trail. I was really happy to have the help from my coach, Thomas Hürzeler, who really pushed me. And he's not like pushing, but he's just told me that I will be able to run the short trail. And I think he knows really well what I'm able or capable of doing. So he knew when I'm at the start, I'm able to do a good race and to place myself quite high up as well. So yeah, he was really aiming for this 46 for myself. And then, I knew that I will not do more races just after this race. I wanted to have a rest, or a good rest actually, after 46 kilometers. So that's why I was planning to only go to Dolomites after that. And from there on, it's like kind of planned, but even though open, since I'm like planning to run Siersinal, but deciding this weekend if I give it a go or not, because I just had too much. I was suffering too much on Siersinal already, so I don't want to suffer on this, like in this case again. So and then I'm really keen to for the first time go to US to race there, because I've never been to US, and it would be fun to race 2 races of the Golden there actually this autumn.
And so I'm going to take this back to World Champs for a second, and then we can talk about Mammoth Trail Fest. But so you were saying that you were kind of nervous about the idea of doing the 46 kilometer race, but then you took the race out like pretty hard and like dominated it pretty much from the beginning. So tell us a bit about that race for you.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite surprised how it all started. I mean, I knew I was well trained for like 20 kilometers. That was kind of like 26 kilometers was my longest race, or training, not race, training in forehand, like in the weeks before the championship. So I knew I was well trained for this distance, but I didn't know how it will go or if it will last. So I just tried to start with a decent speed where I feel like comfortable with, and then see if it will last or not. I just it was a really chaos actually. It was so many runner around, so I actually didn't see lots of girls around me, even though they were just close by with me. I didn't see them in the forest at the first 10 kilometers was really in a forest, in a dense forest, with guys around. So I just did my race, and from kilometer 10 we had a aid station, so I knew they were about 1 minute just behind me. So I just continued my speed, and yeah, from kilometer 20 on, it started to get a bit hard. So yeah, I knew that I had just give to everything, and we'll see how it will go. And in the end, Clementine was just better than me. She was passing me in the downhill. She was just way faster and had the possibility to hold the cadence high, and I was just like suffering a lot down there. But I mean, for me, it was just the best thing I could do that day, and it was just amazing. So it was a crazy race and a crazy long day, but I really enjoyed the race actually.
Yeah. And I think Clementine does some of the longer sky races, so she's kind of used to being out there for like 5 hours at a time.
Yeah, and she also had like one of the best downhills, men or women, that day. So if you were going to get passed by someone, I guess it was going to be her on the last downhill. Just like psychologically, like you said, like going into the 22, I'm also kind of bringing it back for a second. The 22 championships, like you weren't in what we would probably all say is like your best form. Like you only had like a month of training. And so to go and do that, like you said, you're really proud, but if you were in the shape that you were in Austria, like you were definitely in contention for a podium in both of those races. So psychologically, like building yourself up for Austria, what did that look like? Was it hard, or were you just like, what did that look like?
So, I mean, coming to Thailand, it was just a win to be there actually. For me, it was just luck that the championships were held so late. I mean, November, it's not normal to have competitions there in trail running. So for me, I was a lucky girl to have a competition even in 2022. So I had nothing to lose, and I gave it all. And there was like this 6th place at the up and down. I have to say, or to admit, I was not able to walk for a week, not because of pain, but just because I had such pain in my muscles. I had so sore muscles, so I had hard times to go to toilet actually. But yeah, so I had a goal to like really be in a better shape, to not have problems to go to toilet after World Championships in 2023. So yeah, but actually coming to the World Championship in Austria, of course my goals were a bit higher, kind of also the expectations were higher. But I did a different trail. So changing the distance, it made also that I didn't have the favorite, like it was never mentioned as a favorite in any kind of like papers or homepages. So for me, I was like just coming there and showing what I can, and then we will see what it is. And to have the trust from the coaches and the support also from a whole girls team. Actually, we had 6 Swiss girls on the start line with the possibility to win gold in the team. This gave me a lot of motivation and strength to just go in and do what I can. And yeah, I was not able to predict it, or to say, I was not like Stian probably could have said he will go there and he wants to win gold. For me, it was just like to do as good as I can, and then we will see where I'm at. And so it was different, but it's kind of like the same on the other hand as well.
That's awesome. So you mentioned that first years and all, you're not quite sure if you're running. Is that right?
No, so I'm actually planning to run. Okay. But I gave myself 2 weeks after Dolomites to just take it like easier to train normally, to see how my body reacts, because Dolomites, it's quite crazy. I mean, you probably have seen the pictures, kind of like this rough, stony downhill terrain. And I didn't know how my body is going to cope with this hard surface. So I really gave myself 2 weeks, and that will be this weekend, to decide if I'm running or not. But everything looks good at the moment. So I'm really hoping and planning to run Sierre-Zinal as well.
Yeah.
I was
just going to say, like, as tough as that terrain looks, you make it look like art when you're running downhill. It's just flawless. It's pretty amazing. You make it look so easy where I'm like, I would totally do that. And then I watch everyone else. I was like, oh, maybe not.
You could do that as well.
Yeah.
I'd be walking for sure.
Oh, sorry, MK, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. I was just going to ask, like, are you excited to go back to Sierre-Zinal after having like a pretty negative experience the last time you were there?
Yes, I'm excited, but I'm also really nervous, actually. I had, like, I think my best ever race in Sierre-Zinal in 2019. So I actually do have really good memories from back then. I had the second fastest ever ran time. I mean, it's kind of like, I didn't know how I do still not know how I did that, actually. So I have like this beautiful memory. On the other hand, I have this like horrible memory from 21. So, and actually this 21 memory is still like quite big in my head. So I do have to work quite much on my mental in like how I go to this race. But Sierre-Zinal is just so special to me. I do know a lot of guys, or all like older coaches I had, for example, also in orienteering, who did this race like 40 years ago, and who are telling how this story started there. And yeah, it's like kind of the only really big trail race who is like really that old, and which is still also really beautiful. So I'm really looking forward to be there and to meet all these people there again.
And you're a Swiss woman, so it probably means even more for you than some others.
Exactly. No, I mean, it's really special because in Switzerland we have like these 4 languages. So Sierre-Zinal is actually in the French part, where trail running is kind of big. In a German part where I'm living, trail running isn't big. It's really small. I mean, like there are a lot of people who do trail running, but probably not competing in trail running. So Sierre-Zinal is, for me, it's kind of not it's really not in my part or my area, but it's still like it's in Switzerland. So many people who have been there or who are there, I do know, and that makes it really special, actually. Yeah. And I mean, since it has been my second trail race I've done, it's really still like something I want to do a good race there again, to have this like beautiful memory of Sierre-Zinal.
Yeah, I totally get that for sure. Me and MK had a very dogged of a time last year, and we'd love to make a good memory there as well.
Redeem it.
It's a hard place though too. Even in the toughest moments, you look around and it's one of the most beautiful trails you could ever run on. But I totally get walking away from it and wanting to replace that bad memory. So can you give us kind of the 2 scenarios? So if you do race Sierre-Zinal, will you still come to America, and then vice versa? Like America's on the schedule regardless?
Yes, I have actually booked my flight, so I have no. I do need to get to meet you finally again. So
yes,
I hope I will meet you there.
Yes.
Now I'm actually really planning to go to US. We actually wanted to do family holidays first, but unfortunately we had a bit too much this spring. It was a bit too much travel for the kids. So in the end, I'm just going by myself for 2 weeks. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this adventure. I see it as an adventure and something new. And I'm really looking forward to do these 2 races in US.
That's awesome.
Danny lives in Mammoth. So we will both be at the Mammoth Trail Fest, hopefully doing some stuff with the athletes. If we're not racing, neither of us have decided yet, but
depends how we feel after OCC.
Yeah.
Don't want to force anything, but regardless, we'll be there. And that's really exciting that you're coming over. Are you doing kind of like that Golden Trail road trip too? Where okay, cool. You're seeing all the cool stuff.
I think so. I have to rethink this kind of this plan. But at the moment, I've just booked the flight to Denver and back again. So yeah, from San Francisco back. So I have to plan this between. But yeah, I will see. I haven't been in the Golden Circus for a while, so I have to see if I'm no. But it's just amazing to be with lots of nice people, to get to know these as well. I mean, there's lots of new people actually around, so I'm really keen to meet them. When I'm traveling with the family, I do not have the chance to talk a lot with them, so that would be the perfect chance to do that. So probably yes.
Yeah, I love that. The Golden Circus is a very good way to describe it to people who maybe aren't on the inside of things all the time. I guess kind of just to wrap it up. So is this all assuming that you are going for the crown again this year in the Golden Trail World Series?
I don't know. So yes, I will do kind of like all these races, and of course I'm planning to go to the final as well. So yes, but there's so many good girls, and as I've mentioned before, I mean, I didn't do 2 races, probably Segama, where I could have been good as well. I do not know if I will be as good on the Pikes Peak, actually. I will not be able to prepare much for the altitude, for example. So, I mean, I will see how it goes, and I hope I will do decent. But there's so many good girls, like, who are like possibly winners. So, it's going to be interesting. And I actually like to be like the underdog who just does what is possible. And let's see what's going to happen this year, actually.
Yeah. Well, I will say personally, MK and I have never thought you as an underdog.
Yeah.
So we are cheering hard. And just a little tip, when it comes to altitude, everyone suffers past 7,000 feet, even if you're used to it. So Pikes Peak hurts for everybody, even if you live at altitude. There's just no way. There's no way.
I was going to say, I ran it last year, and like, it's a grinder the entire race, but by the time you're like dead, you're pretty much already done.
Yeah.
So you just have to like make it through the last like 2,000 feet, so like 600 meters. And that's like probably the worst part. And I also live at altitude, and it hurt just as bad. And I got my butt kicked by plenty of women that do not live at altitude.
Yeah, but that's kind of the amazing thing. I mean, you just you will start there, and it's just do it, and you will see how it works that day, probably.
Yeah.
It's quite fun. I mean, I love to do new experiments. I love to run in Nepal, for example. That was high altitude as well. And I even was pregnant there. So, I mean, it's just fun to do new things, kind of. So, yeah, I'm kind of the person who does that. And yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I forgot that you won that race in Nepal, so you'll probably be pretty good at Pikes Peak because it's way shorter.
Story, actually.
Well, I also can't wait to watch you at Mammoth Trail Fest and just to like rip on these downhills, so I know what the gold standard is when I'm training here. Just like, yes, so it helps me. But yeah, Judith, you are such an inspiration as a mom, as an athlete, and just as a person coming back from injury. And it has been amazing to talk to you. So thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you for having me.
This has been the Sub Hub, brought to you by Freetrail.